She never intended to be a wife at all. Not for love. Not for partnership. Not for a future. From the very beginning, the only thing she wanted was his death. In South Korea, a woman named Eun-hae married a man who adored her, a man who adopted her child, worked tirelessly for his family, and genuinely believed he had finally found someone to share his life with. What he didn't know was that the person standing across from him at the altar wasn't promising, "Till death do us part." She was planning when death would arrive, and how much she'd be paid for it. Because when her husband Yoon Sang-yeop drowned on what was supposed to be a casual summer trip with friends, Lee didn't just grieve. She went on national television. She looked into the camera and said the insurance company was refusing to pay out his life insurance. 800 million won, more than $600,000. She wanted the country to feel sorry for her. She wanted public pressure. She wanted that payout. What she didn't expect was that this TV appearance would become the spark for one of the most disturbing murder investigations in modern Korean history. Because her husband's death at Gapyeong Valley wasn't an accident. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't a tragic misstep near the water. It was a third attempt on his life. Planned, pursued, and finally carried out. This is the story of Eun-hae, the woman who married a man just to drown him. Before courtrooms, headlines, and TV shows, Yoon Sang-yeop was just a man trying to build a quiet life. He was 39 years old. He had a steady job. He had worked for about 15 years, doing what a lot of people do. Show up, work hard, pay bills, keep going. By South Korean standards, Yoon was what many would call a good catch, educated, employed, and responsible. The only thing missing was a family of his own. He was lonely, not in a dramatic, movie way, in a quiet, everyday way, going home to an empty place, watching other people's lives move forward, marriages, kids, anniversaries, and wondering when it would finally be his turn. Then he met Eun-hae. She was 11 years younger, charming, energetic. She had a young daughter from a previous relationship. To Yoon, she was everything at once, a partner and a chance to become a father. They married. Yoon didn't just accept her daughter. He adopted her, gave her his name, raised her as his own. For Yoon, it felt like his life had finally started. He had a wife. He had a child. He had a future. But there was one thing he did not know. The woman he just promised his life to never actually wanted a life with him. Later, in court, judges would state plainly that Lee never had any intention of living as a real wife. She had married him with another purpose in mind, his life insurance. The day he thought he had gained a family, he had actually signed a contract with someone who saw his death as a financial plan. In March 2019, just months before Yoon would die, Lee began an affair with a man named Cho Hyun-soo. Cho was 30. He had a criminal record. He wasn't a quiet side story. He became her main character. But this wasn't normal infidelity. Lee didn't keep Cho in the shadows. She brought him in, right into Yoon's life. She introduced Cho to her husband as a friend. She invited him along whenever they went out. Dinner? Cho was there. Drinks? Cho was there. Trips? Cho was there. Imagine that for a second. You're already insecure. You finally find a wife. You adopt her child. You think you're building a home. And then your wife starts bringing another man to everything you do. She laughs with him, touches his arm, lights up when he speaks, and barely looks at you. You don't have to be dramatic to be destroyed by that. You just have to be human. Investigators later concluded that this wasn't random cruelty. It was psychological warfare. Lee belittled Yoon. She insulted him. She ignored him, then dangled tiny pieces of affection. In postcards found later in her apartment, she called herself Cho's master. That wasn't romance. That was domination. The affair with Cho wasn't just about desire. It was about control and about building a partner in crime. Behind the scenes, Lee and Cho were about to move from emotional abuse to physical elimination. By the time Yoon's body was pulled from Gapyeong Valley in June 2019, Lee had already tried to kill him twice. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment murder. This was a project with multiple drafts. Attempt 1, February 2019, poisoning. Prosecutors allege that in February 2019, Lee and Cho tried to poison Yoon by contaminating his food with a dangerous substance. The idea was chilling in its simplicity. If he dies after eating something toxic, who's to say it isn't just a tragic accident? But Yoon survived. Whether he ever realized he had been targeted, we don't know. Officially, nothing stuck. But for Lee and Cho, attempt number 1 had failed. Attempt number 2, May 2019, the fishing spot. 1 month before Yoon's death, Lee and Cho allegedly tried again. This time, water was the weapon. They took Yoon to a fishing location. According to prosecutors, they attempted to drown him there. Again, he survived. At this point, most people would panic. They'd back off. They'd worry someone might start joining the dots. But if anything, these failures seemed to have pushed Lee further. The poison didn't work. The fishing spot didn't work. So she chose a place where drowning would look completely natural. A valley, a day trip, friends, summer. On paper, it would be the perfect accident. It was packaged as a fun outing, a summer escape. On June 30th, 2019, Lee organized a trip to Gapyeong Valley, about 60 kilometers east of Seoul. A beautiful scenic area, popular with tourists, couples, families. Rocks, clear water, a place people go to relax. She invited Yoon, her husband, Cho, her lover, several of her friends. There was one detail everyone knew. Yoon could not swim. He was afraid of deep water. That should have made him the one person you protect near the river. Instead, it made him the perfect target. Video footage recorded by Lee herself would later become evidence in court. In the clips, Yoon is seen in the water with a pool tube, staying close to the shallow area. He's trying to feel safe in a place that already scares him. Then the mood changes. Some of Lee's male friends start joking around. They drag him toward deeper water. They pull at his tube. They even try to flip it. He tells them to stop. They don't. In the background, you can hear a woman's voice laughing. Lee, on the footage, she says things like, "He can't. The tube is too heavy. Hey, go flip it with him." It sounds playful, but there's nothing playful about what happens next. According to witnesses, Lee begins pressuring Yoon to jump into the deep water from a rock about 4 meters high. She tells him all the men are diving. When he hesitates, she says she'll jump instead, poking at his pride. Yoon eventually jumps. He can't swim. The water beneath him is around 3 meters deep. There are no proper life jackets on him. No trained rescue team waiting. He hits the water. He struggles. He sinks. He calls for help. No one gets to him in time. In that valley, on what was supposed to be a summer day with friends, Yoon Sang-yeop drowns. He is 39 years old. He dies surrounded by people who should have protected him, including the woman who had sworn to share his life, a woman who had already tried twice to end it. If the death itself wasn't suspicious enough, what investigators found on paper made it impossible to ignore. At the time of his death, Yoon was covered by multiple life insurance policies. Total payout, about 800 million won, more than $600,000. Each one had the same beneficiary. Lee Eun-hae. That might still be explainable. Lots of spouses have policies. But then came the detail that turned this case from odd to outrageous. Prosecutors later emphasized that Yoon died approximately 4 hours before his insurance policy was scheduled to expire. For hours. If he had survived that day, those policies would have lapsed. Lee would have received nothing. Not only was Yoon's life reduced to a sum, it was placed on a timer. The trip, the location, the non-swimmer, the water, the timing. Nothing about his death was as simple as it looked. After Yoon died, investigators went through his phone and found messages he'd written in the months before his death. Some were to other people, some were to himself. Taken together, they show you what it looks like when someone has been broken psychologically. In January 2019, Yoon sent a message to Cho, his wife's secret lover, though it's unclear if he knew the full truth. He wrote, "I just want respect from Eun-hae. It's so hard being looked down on and verbally abused." About his marriage, he wrote, "I feel sorry for Eun-hae, but honestly, she won't even notice that I'm not there." Think about that line for a second. That's not a joke. That's someone who knows he's invisible to the person who should see him most. Yoon was in a dark place emotionally. Investigators found evidence that he was experiencing deep psychological distress, the kind that comes from being constantly belittled, controlled, and made to feel worthless. He had come to believe that his only value to his wife was what she could gain financially from his death. He wasn't just financially exploited. He was emotionally erased. At the time of his death, despite working for about 15 years, Yoon had no savings. He was in heavy debt. 2 days before he died, he asked a friend for 3,000 won, about $2.25, just to buy instant noodles and water. His friend sent him 100,000 won instead, telling him not to worry about paying it back. Yoon sent 97,000 back. He kept only what he needed. That's who he was. Hard-working, respectful, self-sacrificing. And that is the man Lee Eun-hae murdered. Initially, authorities ruled Yoon's death an accident. Case closed. But his older sister could not accept that. She knew her brother. She felt something was wrong. She filed a formal complaint, asking police to reopen the investigation. By November 2019, 5 months after the drowning, police agreed. They had noticed the same thing the insurance company had. Too many policies. Too much money. One beneficiary. The insurance company refused to pay out. They were suspicious. Lee was furious. And this is where she made one of the most arrogant mistakes a criminal can make. Instead of lying low, instead of keeping quiet, she reached for a bigger stage. She contacted the production team of a famous investigative program called Unanswered Questions. Her plan? Go on national TV and accuse the insurance company of unfairly withholding the 800 million won. She wanted to appear as a victim, a grieving widow fighting a coal corporation. She sat under studio lights. She told her story. She played her role. But Unanswered Questions didn't just hand over sympathy. They investigated. They looked at the insurance, the timeline, the drowning, the attempts, the behavior. And instead of forcing the insurance company to pay, the show helped reveal that something far darker was going on. Without realizing it, Lee had effectively walked into the spotlight and pointed the camera at herself. She hadn't just reported a grievance. She had reported herself. As investigators built their case, they decided it was time to formally question Lee and Cho. In December 2021, prosecutors summoned them. They didn't show up. Instead, they went on the run. They used a friend's credit card. They used burner phones. They moved around, trying not to leave a trail. By late March 2022, this wasn't just a quiet investigation anymore. Police released their photos to the public and put them on a national wanted list. The case that had started with a drowning in a valley was now a nationwide manhunt. It lasted 17 days. In the end, it wasn't random luck that brought it to a close. It was family. Lee's own father gave the police the apartment number where they were hiding. On April 16, 2022, officers arrested Lee Eun-hae and Cho Hyun-soo at a residential building in Goyang, just north of Seoul. They were charged with murder by omission, attempted murder, insurance fraud. The tragic accident story was officially over. The murder trial was about to begin. During her trial, Lee made a statement that many people found chilling. She said, "I cannot say that I love my husband, but I never killed him." The prosecution disagreed. They argued that Lee and Cho had tried to create a perfect crime. Take a man who can't swim, put him in deep water with no life jacket, surround him with people who think it's just playful teasing, let him drown, collect the insurance. And when that wasn't enough, they showed the bigger pattern, the poisoning attempt, the earlier drowning attempt at a fishing spot, the cluster of life insurance policies, the timing of the drowning, the video of Yoon being dragged and pressured in the valley, Yoon's messages describing abuse, humiliation, and despair. 5 criminal profilers examined the case. They concluded that Yoon had been subjected to sustained gaslighting, a form of psychological abuse where the victim is made to doubt their own reality, their worth, and even whether they matter at all. On October 27, 2022, the Incheon District Court delivered its verdict. Lee Eun-hae, life imprisonment. Cho Hyun-soo, 30 years in prison. Both were ordered to wear electronic tracking devices for 20 years after release. Lee appealed. In April 2023, the Seoul High Court upheld her life sentence. She appealed again. In September 2023, the Supreme Court of South Korea confirmed the verdict. No more appeals. No more TV performances. Lee Eun-hae will spend the rest of her life in prison. In 2023, the Incheon family court annulled the marriage between Lee and Yoon. The court's stance was clear. This wasn't a real marital relationship. She had married him to extort him, to exploit him, to cash him out. Her lawsuit against the insurance company for the 800 million won was dismissed. The policy she used as the blueprint for murder will pay her nothing. She killed her husband for money she will never receive. As the investigation deepened, authorities uncovered something troubling. This wasn't a first-time death, and insurance money seemed connected to Lee Eun-hae. Court documents and investigative reports revealed that two of Lee's former partners had also died under unusual circumstances. In 2010, an ex-boyfriend died in a car accident. Lee reportedly received insurance money. In 2014, another ex-boyfriend drowned during a trip to Pattaya, Thailand. Investigators looked into both incidents. However, due to insufficient evidence, no charges were ever filed in connection with these cases. It's important to note that these remain unproven allegations. But for many following this case, the pattern raised difficult questions that may never have definitive answers. After Lee's wanted poster went viral, internet users dug into her past. What they found was unsettling. In 2002, when she was still a child, Lee appeared on a TV program called Love House. It was a heartwarming show that renovated homes for families in need. Lee's family was poor. Her parents lived with disabilities. They survived on welfare. On the show, young Lee was presented as a kind, devoted daughter who helped her parents despite their struggle. At the end of the episode, after seeing the newly renovated home, she said something that would later feel almost unbearable to watch. She promised, "Later, when I grow up, I will give help to others in need as much as I received." 20 years later, that same girl would stand in court accused of murdering her husband for insurance money. And the question many people in South Korea asked was, what happened in those 20 years? What changes a child who dreams of helping others into an adult who sees people as payouts? There isn't a neat answer to that. Some stories don't come with clean explanations, only consequences. Yoon Sang-yeop was 39 years old. He was not a perfect man. He was not a movie hero. He was something more important, a real person. He worked hard for 15 years. He adopted a child that wasn't biologically his. He returned money when he thought he didn't deserve it. He stayed in a marriage that made him feel small because he believed he had to. He wasn't greedy. He wasn't violent. He wasn't the problem. His only mistake was trusting the wrong person with his life. When the authorities closed his case as a simple accident, it was his sister who refused to accept it. She pushed. She complained. She demanded answers. Because of her, the case was reopened. Because of her, prosecutors kept digging. Because of her, Lee's story unraveled. Because of her, Yoon got justice. He deserved more than how his life ended. Rest in peace, Yoon Sang-yeop. If this story stayed with you, you're not alone. If you value deep, respectful, true crime storytelling, consider subscribing to Mystery Archives daily and turning on notifications so you don't miss the next case. Tell me in the comments, what do you think drove Lee Eun-hae? Was it just greed or something much darker? If you or someone you know is experiencing emotional distress or is in an abusive relationship, please reach out for support. Talk to a friend, a family member, a counselor, or contact a support service in your area. You are not alone. You deserve safety. You deserve respect. You deserve better. Until next time, stay safe.